Our next speaker is Miss Anne Marie Johnson, who I hope does everything I think she's going to do. She's going to be funny, entertaining, talk about the community, and be a little political, because that is who she is. And I think that was a perfect fit to bring us into doing our keynote speech. So you know her from all of her things on TV, What's Happening Now and Heat of the Night, but there's so much more to her, and she is just such an amazing human being. So Anne Marie, I will give it to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have a myriad time zones. Hello to my friend Jim. Great to see you.
Good morning. Oh, likewise. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning to everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate. I was going to say inviting me to play, but I think participate is a much more appropriate word. So I'm assuming everyone can hear me clearly, and good morning. I'll be coming from the perspective of the world of image creating, messaging, distribution, and the impact those elements have on the American zeitgeist. Democracy is messy. Freedom of speech and artistic endeavors are a blessing, but also daunting and fragile, which has caused unintended collateral damage, especially damage to the early stages of imagination, thought process, and self-confidence of many young and fragile children of color. In no way am I discounting the potential harm done to many white children, but as the saying goes, when white people get a cold, black and brown people get the flu. I'd like to stay on this point for a minute, considering what we're grappling with for the last 5 months. My question is, what impact, if any, has the entertainment industry, which includes news broadcasts, television, feature films, etc., had on the American psyche? I knew America was going to fail on COVID-19 containment when back in late February, the CDC announced that those most vulnerable to the ravages of the virus were African Americans of a particular age with underlying chronic illnesses. For weeks on end, images of frail and dying black and brown patients housed in hallways of overcrowded and underserved hospitals in underserved neighborhoods of New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey were continuously aired as if they were on a mechanical loop, hour after hour, day after day, accompanied by images of long lines of black and brown people desperately trying to get tested or food supplies or clean water. Compound that with the dangerously erroneous rhetoric coming from the nationalists in the White House and all of his co-conspirators in Congress. I knew this country was not going to take this virus as seriously as other nations. Would the country and its leaders be taking this killer virus more seriously if images of young white people dying at an alarming rate were shown hour after hour, day after day? And let's not forget the drumbeat of certain Americans goading other Americans, calling the virus the Chinese virus or the Kung flu. The added layer of otherisms has given the green light for many to poo-poo the killer virus as something for others to worry about. And as if there was a parallel universe, many high-profile African-American artists, athletes, and influencers repeated the historical yet irreversible suspicions as a result of the horrific Tuskegee experiment to question the very existence of this virus, brazenly and publicly challenging fate by ignoring CDC guidelines. And add to the mix the equally ridiculous chorus of extremists who believed and still believe that wearing a mask and the practicing of social distancing is a threat to the Second Amendment and love of country. All of this loud, distracting racket presented to the viewing public on a 24-hour info feed, while common sense and life-saving information continues to battle for a comparable airtime. Although this is not the first pandemic in our lifetime, it is the first time in modern history where the largest industry most responsible for image creating and messaging has been shuttered. Under different circumstances, Hollywood would have kicked into gear, usually with the blessing and prompting of the government, to galvanize the American public to roll up its collective sleeves and combat a common enemy. During World War I, although in its infancy, Hollywood created and promulgated images of American soldiers marching off to war with George M. Cohan's Over There playing in the background. and images of brave women volunteering as nurses to help care for the wounded overseas and care for those in this country battling the Spanish flu. And the iconic photos, movies, poems, songs solidifying America's resolve to defeat the tyranny and fascism during World War II are forever etched into our memories. Movie studio directors and actors were drafted and placed on the fast track of officerhood in order to record every aspect of the war, incorporating the appropriate spin needed to keep those overseas and at home engaged and on the same page, even with the pain and horrors that ultimately entered almost every American home. Even the unpopularity and protests against the Vietnam War did not escape the magic of Hollywood. Had it not been for the images of thousands of body bags filled with American soldiers, or the recorded on-the-ground stories from news correspondents aired for the first time on national television, and the images of young Americans, regardless of age, race, ethnicity, or gender, protesting against the war, viewed by millions of Americans while we ate our dinners, the Vietnam War could have lingered longer. Most recently, we've been reminded of the righteous battle of the civil rights movement due to the untimely passing of Congressman John Lewis. The black and white footage of a 20-year-old Lewis wearing a trench coat and carrying a knapsack, knocked to the ground and beaten by Alabama law enforcement officers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, ignites a visceral response in all of us. Without news cameras capturing the images of water hoses, race dogs, batons, bombings, lynchings, drownings, burnings, crosses, hoods, jeering, cheering, murders, assassinations, riots, political rhetoric, prayers, and sermons to fight against or for civil rights of African Americans and others, President Kennedy and then President Johnson more than likely would not have had the strength, national support, or the come to Jesus moment needed to force them to use their political might to enact change. As with the civil rights movement, would there be a Black Lives Matter movement without the immeasurable involvement of the entertainment industry? I include professional sports as part of the industry because at the end of the day, there is no sports industry without the overt commercialization of sporting events. Had the images of Colin Kaepernick kneeling or the myriad images of African Americans being tortured or killed by some we hire to serve and protect, captured by personal recording devices and or network news cameras, and then televised live or almost live throughout the world, had it not been for those images, we may not be experiencing the cultural, educational, economical, societal, and political comeuppance with which we're currently grappling. The global media attention of the Black Lives Matter movement has given permission to those we define as celebrities or role models or on a lesser level, influencers, who would have otherwise remained silent in order to protect their carefully crafted and revenue generated images, to speak up, act out, and join the universal demand for change. Now, I don't want to diminish the impact of social media platforms on this shift, but television still is key when it comes to ad dollars and the availability and equitable distribution of content across the country. Hollywood historically has played an immeasurable part in myriad cultural shifts of consciousness in this country and maybe even the world, whether the created images and messagings were realistic, accurate, or balanced. When asked to rally the troops, the entertainment industry never shied away from the challenge. But we have entered uncharted territory. The coronavirus has done to Hollywood what no war, economic depression, or disease has ever done before. This is the first time in Hollywood's history that all legitimate production has been suspended, and only now, after 5 months of dormancy, has large-scale production began to slowly crawl back with great trepidation. The AIDS pandemic, which took the life of more entertainment industry professionals than in any other corporate sector, never stopped cameras from rolling or Broadway plays from opening. Considering the murderous politicization and lies coming from the White House about this virus, I have to ask the question, has the unfortunate silencing of Hollywood exacerbated the ravages of this virus? It's too soon to quantify the impact the shuttering of the industry and its participation in helping educate the public regarding COVID-19 has had on the battle against the virus. But suffice to say, the gaping hole left by its silence will be analyzed and debated by professionals for generations. Where do you think we would be right now if the industry, by some miracle, had been able to safely remain functioning during the pandemic? Would science-based messaging via national and regional commercials or episodic television shows or celebrity-packed telethons or special televised events help stop the spread? Although Zoom has been an incredible tool to help create and air current content as we're experiencing now, nothing can compete with the traditional tools used to create and distribute nationally and globally consumed content. Would this country's collective mental health be better served by a functional Hollywood? Would the conflicting and downright bat-crap crazy messaging from the White House be countered and nullified by instructive science-based rhetoric created by the entertainment industry? I believe so. Now, I'm not saying that Hollywood has always gotten it right. I'm not forgetting the nationalist, sexist, racist, homophobic, and xenophobic agenda promulgated by generations of the Hollywood storytelling machine. But even after multiple iterations of the entertainment industry, no one can galvanize the majority of the viewing public like the images created and recorded and aired by this industry. But if we can, for the few minutes I have left speaking as a guest, if we can put aside the calamities we are currently facing and allow me to ask another question. What happens to the still forming human minds when continually subjected to on-screen content populated by two-dimensional characters, which catchy one-liners and beautiful teeth winning insurmountable challenges within minutes, or by the conclusion of a 10-episode television series do to us as humans? Do the following quotes sound familiar? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. You're gonna eat lightning, you're gonna crap thunder. Do you feel lucky, punk? Never apologize, mister, it's a sign of weakness. When you hang a man, you better look at him. Cut the crap, man, it's Shaft. The images of men and boys in movies and television, overwhelmingly created by men for movies and televisions, has probably caused similar generational damage to our society at large than damage caused by institutionalized mores and norms. For many around the world, fictionalized male images on the screen have been the only constant male behavior role modeling they've seen. Women and girls face and suffer from similar unrealistic and somewhat toxic image dilemmas. But since the beginning of the 21st century, we've been blessed with other more realistic and useful avenues and outlets to help counter the constant negative chatter. Can we all say, thank you, Oprah? The same cannot be said for our male counterparts. Although the entertainment industry is changing with the ever-evolving consumer, past images are always present and easily accessed. This also includes the beyond exaggerated and hyper-masculinized and violent images of video games. I'm sure there are experts in the field of human development and social studies who can qualify and quantify the potentially irreversible damage caused by millions of hours of viewing this kind of content. So where do we go from here, and what proactive steps can we collectively take to ensure the entertainment industry continues to take the appropriate steps needed to evolve and move in a more realistic and healthy direction without stifling artistic liberties? First, we have to nurture, encourage, and support all forms of art in public schools. For students of all ages, and I hate to say it, but I will, when I was younger, all of my years spent in public schoolrooms were filled with art, music, and other forms of artistic expression. I was also blessed to have parents who believed involvement in extracurricular classes helped shape a mentally and emotionally healthy child. My siblings and I were required to choose a musical instrument from a very early age. We were all in school orchestras until college. My parents recognized my love for play acting when I was in kindergarten and supported my goals to become a professional actor, and fortunately saw it all come to fruition way before they died. Each step I took to reaching my ultimate goal was met with unconditional support and love from my parents. Although we all were required to go to college and have a backup plan or two, I never doubted my own ability to achieve my goals because of my parents' unwavering belief in me. And the fact that I grew up during a time of uninterrupted arts education in public schools certainly made a huge impact. I'm not saying it has not been battered and bruised by this business. And I'm not saying that I haven't needed the occasional added support of a therapist to help me navigate the extreme ups and downs of being a professional actor. What I do know is that without the strong support of my parents, my teachers, and those I chose to surround me, I don't believe I would have lasted as long as I have in this business, or certainly not without severe damage to my physical, emotional, and mental health. Regardless of the work we do or the life we all lead, without balance, support, and empathy, the trials and tribulations of life become for many just too great to handle. It's all of our responsibilities to be an active partner in the healing of this world. I wish we put as much energy and attention to the reduction of the carbon footprint of the psyche as we do with global environments. I would never encourage anyone to stop watching television or features. That would be silly. But I am encouraging us to be more aware of what we and our families are watching, hearing, and reading. If you try to keep in mind that the overwhelming majority of content we digest is created purely to make money and not to help find ways to solve what ails us, then we all place things in context that they should be received. We have to be more discerning and involved in what we expect from Hollywood. Unless we demand it, it will not happen. We are witnessing the institutional changes the Me Too movement is demanding from all aspects of corporate America, both in the public and private sectors. And hopefully, the universal demand for the end of systemic racism with similar changes will take place. I'm trying to remain positive, but unfortunately, I've been alive just long enough to say, been there, done that. But I'm encouraged to know that there are thousands and thousands of like-minded people, including all of you who are participating in the annual Scripps Conference, who realize that there is a need for greater change and who are all willing to pull up your collective sleeves to make sure that change becomes an ongoing and permanent actuality. I thank you to the Scripps Conference staff, and thank you, Dr. Warner, for inviting me to participate this morning. Let's all do our best to be safe and stop the spread of COVID-19, and please continue to wear our mask and practice safe social distancing. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you ever want to do applause for a person, you can also put the little hand sign up here and she can see them. That was amazing. How that hooked in together, and you guys didn't even speak, like, and it worked out well. And as I'm hearing you talk about the images, it is images, you know, it is how all of this comes together from what we're doing and what we're seeing and change, you know, and it's such a refreshing way to look at it, but it's also you made me think. And thank you so much for doing that. And thank you so much for putting that together so beautifully and giving me the images. And my husband, I'm gonna embarrass him just a little bit. He texts me because you said Shaft. He loves Shaft, but he's like he's texting me. He's all excited because you used it as a reference and it brought it home for him, you know? And so so you did it. Amazing. So next up is Akil to come back and tie all this together from his perspective.
Excellent job, Ms. Johnson. I think some of the components that you brought to the table really tie in to not only the individual, but to the societal norm that we're dealing with at this moment, as opposed or in addition to the worldwide norm. There was much in what you said, imagery. And as I talked about yesterday, imagery becomes so important because we operate in the reality that we're defined by. And if that definition of self is not one of empowerment, if that definition of self is not one of greatness, if that definition of self is induced by the trauma that we see on an ongoing basis, then at the end of the day, the reality that we envision ourselves from is going to be that same trauma that we deal with. So it's so important that that imagery, as you reflect upon and refer to, presents within the individual self as opposed to the collective self, the capability of hope, the capability that we can navigate, the capability that we have the wherewithal of resiliency to be able to survive the norms, the trauma, the crisis, just the life that we're in. So as we move forward to tie this whole thing together, as I talked about earlier, what we're trying to do here is forward those tools that each of us individually and collectively could make the best judgment call so we can be an asset as opposed to a liability to this societal structure that we find ourselves in. You know, when we look at how society works, we have to understand the collaborative nature. None of us have all the tools and all the expertise and all the capability to define the reality that's going to get us to the point to where it's a win-win for all involved. So there's going to be times that we are in disagreement. There's going to be times that we are in agreement. There's going to be times that we have to slow our pace to meet the pace of others. There's going to be times that they are going to have to pick up their pace to move our, or to meet the momentum that we're driving the process with. So when you look at the reality of life, there are so many tools, there are so many challenges, there are so many issues of concern that we have to navigate. We have to be able to bring to the table the best components, the best infrastructure, the best systems, and the best strategies that are going to afford us to navigate this thing called trauma. Look, let me be real clear. All of us deal with trauma on an ongoing basis. When we look at realistically, if we're honest with ourselves, we will know that life in general is predicated on trauma. That challenge that refines you, that refines the character, that refines the behavior patterns is in a large part defined by that pressure that we have to face in life. And our character is going to be a manifestation of how we deal with that pressure. So with that said, let us use things of the caliber of this conference, of the expertise of all of us here. Let us use that to bond ourselves, to be able to move ourselves in the best capacity that we can. Look, there is too much that we have to face. And in this short life that we've been afforded here, if we don't get the resiliency of trying to bring out within that life the value of self, the value of relationships, the value of why we have been chosen, and we have been chosen to be here. If we don't realize that divinity of that selection and what we have been brought here to bring, we have not been brought here to bring destruction, canceristic mindset, or the eradication of others. We've been chosen to bring some degree of greatness to empower ourselves as well as each other to make this the best place we can be. And if we're going to do that, it's going to take work. It's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take having the right operational protocol. It's going to take having the right infrastructure, having the right collaborations, and most importantly, understanding that we are here to serve a much bigger purpose than ourselves. And I think if we can do that with the tools of this conference, with the expertise that all of you bring, if we can humble ourselves and realize that our egos are not our amigos, we can move this process forward. I love the words I just heard from you, Ms. Johnson, from the chief, from you earlier, Deborah, and I would just say on this, let's use this to be the best we can be, and let's use it to also, as we rise, we will raise others in the process. I salute all of you for being here. Thank you for listening to my few words. I throw it back to Deborah.
Preach. You know, I hear you talking, and you've been my mentor for so many years. And I wrote down this phrase as Anne-Marie was talking, and it resonated to me after you spoke. It says, the best resource is you.
Yes, ma'am.
I wrote down, you're the best resource, because see, now I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit, but people always hear me talking about macrosystemic, microsystemic. What in the world does that mean? You know, it's from Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, but what it means is we have a big picture, but in our one-on-one interactions, we can create change that makes a rippling effect, right? And Anne-Marie, which I haven't shared with you, but you were one of the first African-American people I saw on TV that wasn't a stereotype. when I was a kid. I saw you on What's Happening Now. And I have always been into the arts. And I remember people telling me, because I lived in this small town where I was the only, saying, oh, you can't really do that. Right. And when I saw you, I said, she's on TV. She's not like all the other ones. Why can't I? Right. And it made a mindset in me. It's like, I can do that. You know, and then, you know, I got it because God didn't give me the pipes to sing, but he gave me the pipes to talk. And I remember thinking, but she's on TV. This is my gift. What can I do with it, though, to change the world? Right. And then I realized me being who I am and trying to be the best role model I could be, from seeing you role model, from seeing Akil role model to me, from the students that I shape, I can begin to do those one-on-one things to make bigger change. And then when I go find out that one of my students is now doing something that's different and creating change and creating something anti-racist and creating a society that looks at things differently. I know my one-on-one in my little neck of the woods doing these conferences and doing the things that I love because God has told me to do this, and I am following that path, because when I deviate, it doesn't work out for me, right? I know I'm creating something bigger. I'm creating change for my son and my daughter to live in, right? So I realize I'm a resource. I am a resource. I am a community resource, right? And so we're community collaboration. The one thing, when you go through this conference, this is my charge. This is the thing I want you to do when you go through this course this day on Zoom. I want you to find something you can do in your neck of the woods. Something small. It could be just talking to somebody, or it could be creating a program. Whatever it is that lights your fire. Remember, my motto is go big or go home, but that doesn't have to be you. It could be something that makes you feel good, and doing that in your neck of the woods, it's going to create a bigger change. Because when we come back at the end, Robert Hernandez is going to tie this all together, and he's going to ask, what did you take away and what can you do? Given all this to you, I love giving this conference, but I like doing it so people go do something with it. Get movement, get moving. My kids will tell you, I make a move. I make a move because I'm creating change agents. That is what God has told me to do. That's what I'm doing. I don't want people sitting around. I want change agents. And so that is what I want people to be charged up to do in this conference. We are a resource.
Excellent.
Anne-Marie's clapping. Yay!
Good work, Dr. Warner.
So with that said, that's your charge for today.